So teachers in some schools, in the full magnet schools and the 6 to 8 schools, told us that certain school practices were helping to create positive learning environments at their schools. Particularly, they told us that their schools were more likely to have school-wide behavior management plans and to teach and model behavioral expectations to students on a school-wide level. Teachers also said they took action to encourage positive behavior in their students and to share that with students' families. And they were monitoring students' behavior referrals and establishing positive ways for students to interact with one another through things like routines and group work. And I think we heard loud and clear from our panelists today that routines, and relationships are part of what helps develop those positive learning environments for students. And there are some teachers at some schools who are more likely to say that they were doing it. So we hope that all of our teachers feel empowered to do that in their classes, and we think they should be doing that. We also know from previous SchoolWorks interviews with principals that the schools with higher graduation rates were more likely to have school-wide behavior management plans. And they gave fewer referrals to their students. And they were not only modeling the expectations for behavior to their students, but they were also deliberately teaching their students how to replace inappropriate behaviors with appropriate ones. And the principals with school-wide behavior management plans also reported that they felt their teachers were more effective at classroom management. So what was happening on a school-wide level was trickling down in a positive way to the class level. So we know that it's important for school leadership to proactively address student behavior by involving the entire staff in planning and implementing school-wide expectations, and by providing positive reinforcement for appropriate behaviors for their students. And we're glad that some schools are doing this. And we know that some schools who aren't even up here are doing it too, but we want for all of them to be doing it. So finally, teachers told us that they feel successful when their students are successful, and I think we heard that too from our panelists today. Teachers, when we asked them what student success was, they highly agreed that it was when their students are understanding the material in their courses and making progress. And they also took pride in their student success when they were showing progress during the year, or whether it was in later years, as our teachers were saying today, when they were coming back to visit, staying in touch. There are invitations to weddings and graduations, and students sharing with their teachers that they were proud of the accomplishments and that they were proud of the choices they were making in their lives. So our teachers care about their students, and we know that, and we think that that's fantastic. Sounds like an obvious thing, but it's really great to hear and really inspiring to hear. So now I'm going to get into what teachers need, what they told us that they needed. They had identified some areas that they think challenge their ability to provide all of their students with what they need to succeed. And they also want to work with community in order to address these challenges. And I also want to note that many of these needs were also identified by principals in previous SchoolWorks interviews. So teachers need more helpful feedback in order to improve and discuss teaching with peers. Although teachers generally agreed that their RISE evaluations were fair and helped them both reflect on and develop their practice, they weren't quite as confident that the feedback from their evaluator was helping them to understand how to improve. And that's what we want, is teachers really to understand how to do that and then to make those changes. And teachers weren't using RISE quite as often to discuss their practice with other teachers or their principals. And we know that could be because of time constraints during the day. But we also heard from teachers this year in schools with higher graduation rates that they were more likely to be using RISE to discuss their craft with other teachers. And they were more likely to say that they relied on each other for support. So we think that it would be really good for teachers to talk to one another in order to understand how they can improve and get better. And we hope that their feedback on these RISE evaluations ultimately helps them to do it. Teachers also told us that they needed different supports to help improve their practice, and that was based on how much experience they had had. So our teachers who had less time as teachers in total said that they actually wanted more professional development training around classroom management and working with students with special needs, and that they wanted more support from their administrators to create positive learning environments at their schools. It was the teachers that had more years of experience under their belts who told us what they really wanted the most was to work with other teachers who were in their same subject area and grade level, even if it meant outside of their own schools. So they were really saying, we want to work with other teachers in our areas so we can get better in our specific areas of expertise. And also, teachers who taught special education classes said that they wanted help in modifying their curriculum so that it could become more rigorous for their students. And teachers said that they wanted more support from families and from community members in schools, for students, and for their work. So in schools, teachers asked parents and community members to visit the schools, to volunteer in the schools, to just come to the school, and also to form more formal partnerships with schools as well. And then for the students, teachers want us as community members and families to be present for our students and to ask them about their school, to ask them about their homework, and also to share with them the value of education. And finally, teachers said, talk to us more. We want more communication with you. That will help our students in the end. And we also want you to share with one another the positives that are happening. So we also asked teachers what did they need in order to increase learning for all their students. And this is what teachers told us up here. There were a lot of things that teachers said that they needed. And I will say that these needs were echoed by principals when we talked to them in 2010. So a concern is that given the current budgetary challenges in the district, teachers may be less likely to receive some of these supports at their schools that they need. However, we also think that some of these supports can be provided by changing some practices at schools without even spending any money. And that's what we would hope to see and what we're hoping to kind of ask for. And finally, teachers in some schools expressed even greater challenges and a greater need for some of those supports. So our feeder schools, our 9 to 12 high schools, and higher poverty schools, teachers at those schools specifically brought up needing more books and supplies, classroom assistant staff, and challenges around their learning environments and the college and career preparation strategies at their schools. So we really appreciate teachers letting us know what supports they need in order to help all of their students succeed. And we also appreciate what we've learned in the past 3 years of SchoolWorks interviews. And I'm going to hand things over actually now to Mayetta to describe some progress that we've seen in the district, as well as some areas of equity concern that we really need to address.
First, I want to say that the last 20 minutes or so has been the culmination of about 2 months' worth of Amy's sweat and tears and furious typing and analyzing styling. So please give Amy a round of applause for all the work that she's done. We are really fortunate to have her on staff and working with us and championing sort of this work with her level of expertise. So we're really glad to have that. So, thanks, Gary. So back in 2009, we started SchoolWorks by just interviewing principals. And we did it because, as you know, we published that report to the community every year with student achievement data in it. And we kept hearing from people, well, what is happening in schools? Why do we have no achievement gap in some, and why do we have a huge one in others? And so SchoolWorks was meant to help us try to figure out what are those things that are actionable that we can do something about. So we started then with those questions. So we asked about a ton of different things. And brought it back to a lot of you. Anybody here in 2009 in that first round of principal interviews? Okay, we've got a couple of people. So we brought it back to the 2 people who raised their hands. I'm just kidding. And there are many others. To say, here's what we heard. What do you think is most important? What should we focus on? Of all the things that are possible, what do you think makes the biggest difference for kids? And the 3 big things that came out of that discussion, because they thought it was important, but also that was what we saw in terms of things that were the most different across schools, was sort of the 3 things in that orange-ish oval. So I'm going to ask you to repeat those with me. So the first one was teaching and coursework. That was weak. Come on, we know how important teaching and coursework is, right? I need you to say it louder. What's the most important thing right now that we can talk about? Thank you. The second one is interventions. And the third one is environment, and the positive learning environment that we can create for students. So because those were the three most important things that you all thought were important, but we also knew made a difference for kids, that led us to the next year talk to counselors and social workers, because we know how important their job is when it comes to putting kids in the courses that they need and making sure that they're connected to the right kinds of supports. So the next year took us to principals and counselors, and we're really glad to sort of complete the picture this year and have the perspective of teachers included in that as well, so that we can see a bigger picture as to what's going on, but also know more clearly sort of what's happening in our schools. So the good news is that we've seen some progress in these areas, and I'll talk about each of those individually, but we also have some concerns that that have come up in each year that I want to raise to us again today that we can build some action around. So, again, what was that one of the first really important thing that makes a difference for kids? Teaching and coursework. Absolutely. You're so good at this. So on the left, you're going to see some progress, and on the right, you're going to see some concerns. So we're going to start with the progress. So what we've seen over the past few years is we've seen an improved hiring process. So principals told us as time went on, they felt more confident in the quantity of teacher candidates that they got and the quality in who wanted to work in their school. So we thought that was really great to share. We see that one of the things that we found was in those more successful schools, they had a core team of teachers like Ronise who know all the answers, who help support other teachers. And so we want to make sure that happens in every school. And so part of what the district has planned as their Empowering Effective Teachers plan is to have that sort of core team in every high school. And so we're glad about that. I hope that you share our excitement, too, about the positive comments that Amy shared with you that teachers feel about teacher evaluation and sort of those initial feelings that it's helpful, it's fair, and we think it's going to help us do better by kids, which is really exciting. And, you know, there's definitely a shift in Pittsburgh around focusing on teaching and learning, and there's a lot more happening and a lot more attention being paid to making sure that courses are rigorous, that kids are being taught those skills that we know they're going to need. So we think that's really exciting. And one of the issues that we sort of started with naming pretty early was the issue of access to rigorous courses. And so one of the points of progress that I can proudly report is that there is now a different criteria, actually, for who gets access to advanced courses. And you don't have to have a gifted IEP to have access to advanced courses. So we're really excited about that progress. And I think you saw some living testaments as well to that progress earlier today. We do, though, have some things that we're still concerned about, and we want you to be concerned as well. So, first on the list was student factors were sort of consistently reported as the leading barrier to providing high-quality instruction. And that was from principals and from teachers as well. We know that we asked this year about how much homework students received, and we learned that students actually in mainstream courses were the least likely to be given homework, and feeder schools were the most likely to not give all students books to take home. And the reason this is really important is because, like Dr. Lane said, we want students to be able to choose what their next step is going to be. And to do that, you need to know how to study, how to work independently, and how to take charge of your own learning. And so if students aren't being demanded to do that and taught to do that in high school, we worry that they won't be able to, that will put students at a disadvantage after they leave the comfort of their school. And lastly, we have a concern about course placement being sort of less related to college and career preparation in high-poverty schools and in high schools, because it's really important that students are sort of coached in choosing courses that align to a path for college or for career training or for whatever it is that they decide they want to do sort of after high school. We're concerned that's not happening in our high schools.